Jen, what's up, my friend? How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing really good. Welcome to the Spots of Love podcast. I'm super excited to have you as a guest on here. I have like a list of people that's coming up over the next few weeks, and it's some of my favorite people to talk to. And you're one of those people, so I'm glad that you agreed to do the podcast for me.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm following some pretty big. I just when we're recording this, Jess Nelson's just came out, and you just announced Hedge, and I know some of the other ones you're doing. So
yeah,
it's
you're
cool to be in
part
that
of
company.
Yeah, for sure. You're part of like this. Some of the people that we have coming up are secrets. Some fans, some that aren't fans, but all of them that are coming up are like super important people. Not that no one else isn't,
Right.
but some of the, like, especially from the fans' viewpoint, you, Hedge, and some of the other people that's coming up, we've seen your names. You guys are like some of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to the franchise and that kind of thing. And so you're definitely people that others want to hear from. So I'm super excited for this next batch. Yeah, for sure. To get started, the way that I always start every podcast is, since the stories are different between each person, is just what was your introduction to Barney? Do you remember the first time you got introduced to Barney, or maybe your earliest memory?
Yeah, I've been impressed listening to some of the other ones that people actually do remember, because I have no idea. He was around pretty much right from when I was born, because I have a sister who is a year and a bit older than me. And so my mom would tell me this story that when she was, when my sister was coming, she was in the hospital, and there was a kid in the room beside her, and the nurses came to her and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but this kid really likes their Barney video, and they're going to watch it again and again, so you're going to hear it. I'm sorry." And her response was, "What's a Barney?"
Yeah.
She had no idea what it was. She had missed all of the hullabaloo about it. And so she overheard the video, and I think she kind of instantly understood what these people in Texas were doing. Sure. And she got a kick out of the Sally the Camel song, the punchline, "Sally is a horse." And so when she brought my sister home, she sent my dad out to get some things, and one of those, among that, was a box set of Barney videos. And from there, we bought almost all of them.
Wow.
And then we've had for several years they bought almost all of them, and then lots of merchandise as well.
Wow, that's awesome. So your older sister, around what time frame was this? Had Barney been out for a few years?
This was I was born in the mid-90s, so just a little bit before that. So Barney was definitely established.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've shared that kind of same. I don't remember my introduction to Barney either. I had an older sibling, though, who was into the show, so it kind of just got passed to me. And I carried it far longer than he did. I think by the time it came to me, he was done with it.
Yes.
But yeah, that was kind of my introduction too. It was already kind of a part of our family. He was born in 92, so like he was born right before Barney started on PBS. So he was right there at the very beginning. And then me being born in 93 and growing with it, almost from the very beginning. So that's interesting that's kind of how your story was too, that it got passed to you from that older sibling introduction.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely stuck around longer.
Yeah. So did I. And you know that I used to imitate the show and things like that. And I did that all the way into high school. So, I wasn't ashamed of it then, and I'm not ashamed of it now either, but I definitely wasn't so vocal about it during my high school years and things like that. Cause the world was a little bit different, when it came to accepting Barney than they are now. So, but yeah, I definitely stuck around with it far longer than maybe most people would have or think that you should have. That's for sure. Did you have, or do you have an all-time like favorite? I think I know what your favorite era is, which is that very beginning Barney and Friends era, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
that's probably the. How do I put this? That's kind of. They had done the videos, the Backyard Gang series, and so they had kind of worked out all the kinks. But all the original people were still there, Kathy Parker and Cheryl Leach, and everybody was still around. And so that's kind of, in my mind, that's sort of the ultimate realization of what Cheryl's original vision was for it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then as it went on, obviously it evolved, and there were great additions added. But I think those are kind of pure Barney.
Gotcha.
Those first couple seasons.
That makes sense too. When we always, as fans, we always debate against all the like episodes and seasons and things like that. But that's what I've been saying to some of the people I've talked to that's worked on this show is those early years, specifically seasons 1, 2, and 3. It was a magical time for just how things aligned with the writers that they had, the voice actors, body actors, the producers, the art like designers, all of that. The music, Bob Singleton, it all just lined up perfectly in a way that I don't think would ever happen again. And somehow it strangely happened then. So I could see where you would say that very early era was the Barney that, especially for them, that they all imagined him to be up until that point, right?
Yeah. And I don't want people to get me wrong. If we're talking about the TV show specifically, I think the first couple seasons done under Hit are also really good, because by then they had moved to these larger studios, but they had never really upgraded the design of the set. And so bringing in the park and having all of these different areas that Barney and friends could go to. Oh, here's the bandstand. Here's the duck pond. Here's a play set. There were all kinds of areas they could explore. Also changing the location, it allowed them to do more about nature and outdoor play. So that was really cool. And then when it comes to the home videos, I have a lot of nostalgia for the ones they were doing during that kind of Lyric Studios era, because as I said, I was born in the mid-90s. And so those are the ones I remember going to the store and getting. This one's probably my very favorite, is Barney's Night Before Christmas. This is the sets on this and the music and the writing and everything. It just has this wonderful classic Christmas card kind of feel, but it's mixed with all of the warmth and wonderful, nice feelings that Barney gives. And so this is a really special video. And also like Halloween Party, Barney in Outer Space, that kind of stuff. There were a lot of really good ones then, because they had the money to build all these extravagant sets.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Lyric era home videos, I think those are the best videos, home videos when it comes to Barney that we have. Because like you said, they had the money to do, and those sets were all like super elaborate and very like creative and thought out, which is really cool. I like that you just mentioned Night Before Christmas, though. I've always said Barney and Christmas somehow just pair perfectly together.
Yes.
It's just something, I mean, Christmas is all about, the thing like spending time with people and all that, but it's something magical about that time of the year. And then Barney is all this magic. And for some reason, I just think those two just mesh super well together. So video like that one, even Christmas Star, I mean, I think that's why Waiting for Santa also is such a classic, because it's they just fit well together.
Yeah, both of those are wonderful.
Yeah.
That's what Barney is too. Friendship, togetherness, love, and then magic and imagination. And that's what Christmas is. So it's a perfect combination.
Absolutely. You can't go wrong with it at all. When we're talking about the season, do you have an all-time favorite episode specifically that you like to watch? Or
I have a visual aid for that too.
Nice.
Families Are Special, or as it was originally titled, A Very Special Delivery. This one, this is the season 2 finale, as people know. This one's got all of the Everyone Is Special message and the Family's Just Right For Me song. And it's got a really nice ending with Tasha introducing her baby brothers. Ella Jenkins, if I can show. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Ella Jenkins was a guest on this one, and that was really special. They did a lot of great guest appearances on the second season.
For sure.
That were really, really wonderful. So yeah, that episode, and this was another one of the videos that we had that we watched over and over. And I think this is my mom's favorite in particular. So that one's really good.
That one was, that's a really great one. That's my favorite one of season 2 as well. I think it's because, I don't know, I think the one thing that I remember early on about that video when I watched it is just like that lullaby rendition of Everyone Is Special.
Yeah.
For some reason, that's just, that episode specifically is the part that I always look forward to. And it's ironic because Onyx, my 2-year-old daughter, I'm making her rewatch Barney from the beginning, because she's when my wife turns it on, it's just constant the live stream hit shows that she gets to. So it's bad quality, bad at like bad in general. And
video
so,
quality. We're not.
Yeah.
We're not getting into that debate yet.
Bad video quality. And so I was like, I'm tired of like watching these same ones over and over again. So I made her start from Backyard Gang, and now we just finished season 3, and we're on like those videos that happened afterwards. But what does she think
of Backyard Gang?
She thinks of it the same as all the other ones. Like if
really?
I bring it, like if I bring up the blue dog, as we know him to be called, and I ask her who is this, to her it's just Barney. And it's the same, and we'll get into it a little bit later. But when I show her like the Barney the Third, Barney's World iteration, it's the same. It's the same thing. There's no differentiating or no difference in how she views them. They're all the same to her.
That's interesting because obviously the Blue Dog ones were out of circulation when I was growing up, but they re-released like Barney Goes to School and Barney's Campfire Second. And my parents bought me Barney Goes to School, and they tell me that as soon as Barney showed up, I ran out of the room. I was so kind of off-put by how different it looked. Now, when I got a little bit older, I became obsessed with the Backyard Gang videos. I just thought it was watching that evolution take place was cool to me. But when I was really little, I didn't like it at all.
That's so hilarious because I got introduced to the Backyard Gang. I was like 8 or 9 by the time when I first found. I don't even know how I found one of the tapes. I think we got it from a thrift store or something. But it didn't. And I was obviously older, but it didn't scare me ever. But so like I mentioned this on the comments that we did in the Facebook group a few days ago. The way that I would get the kids at my grandma's daycare to watch it and be okay with it, because they knew it was something different about it. They weren't scared of it, but they were just they just knew something was different compared to the Barney that they had always seen. And so I came up with a lie, and I told them that the blue version of Barney was Barney's dad. And so then the Barney they knew was like the son kind of thing. And so anytime we watched it, sometimes they would literally come to me and ask, "Can we watch Barney's dad instead?" And so I would play the Backyard Gang stuff.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's funny because by the time this airs, Hedge's episode will have come out. And one thing that he mentioned is also him and the kids at his daycare that he went to running out of the room when they would see that character on screen too. And it's just funny because I didn't have that experience. So it's always funny hearing other people who legit kind of were scared of that.
Well, as I say, when I got a little bit older, and I'm talking like 5 or 6, the library had Waiting for Santa, Backyard Show, and Day at the Beach was my favorite. And so we would return the tape, and then I would wait around for them to put it back on the shelf so I could take it out again. I was obsessed with those early ones at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When you talk about the Backyard Gang, you say A Day at the Beach is your favorite. Why is that one the one that sticks out to you the most out of the?
Well, that was my favorite when I was at that age. That was my favorite one. My favorite one now would probably be Barney in Concert.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because that one, again, it introduced this version of the costume. It introduced Baby Bop. Bob Singleton's music. That one was really the point where it was like, okay, we're ready to go to PBS. We're ready for this to explode. Everything is in place. And you can see the audience reaction in that video, how much the kids are into it. And so it was ready to explode. So that's a really cool point in history too. Oh, for sure. Because you're right. When you watch that, you can really feel that things were working the way that they wanted it to happen, right? It had worked up to that point, but like you said, you can really tell that they were ready to take this show nationally, right? Just the performance, like you said, the music aspect of it and all of that. It would have been so cool to be a fly on the wall during that specific moment in time. To see the reaction of this new version of Barney and more than just the video that we get to see, which is also cool, but to be able to have been in that arena at that time would have been something amazing to witness. I wonder if there's any behind the scenes footage of that specific show, because we don't see anything of it. I wonder if anything exists. There's some debate about Barney in Concert as to whether or not it was an actual concert. I don't remember who said this, but it was someone who was in the Barney crew said at one point that it was that audience was actually mostly invited there it was a video shoot. So they would actually, if someone made a mistake, they could stop and redo the take. I'm not sure how true that is. I know they were doing Barney concerts for a while and Barney appearances for quite a while before that. So they were seeing the audience reaction there. David Joyner talks about the first one he did, and just being kind of, because by then the first 6 videos were out and kids were enjoying them. And so he did an appearance, his first one, I think in December of 1990 or early 91. And the audience reaction was just incredible. And he was just kind of taken aback by that.
Yeah. When I talked to Bob Singleton about that concert, I think that is a true thing, because he also said the exact same thing. That
Oh, did he? Yeah.
That Live in New York City was their first real show that they were able to actually do, and that's why it was so much of a thing to figure out, because when they did Barney in concert at Majestic, it was a lot of change the set, bring the kid and Barney out, do this song, then stop, and bring out the next set and do the next set. Like he explained it that it was very much segmented into just recording for video, and so he said by the end of that video, most of the people had left, because
you can see the size of the audience change.
Yeah,
throughout the tape. He might have been the one who mentioned that to me, so I'm glad to get confirmation on that.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because until someone like that tells you that, you think it's an actual concert. And I never paid attention to the audience much in that way until he said that, and now I can notice it. But before I didn't, and I guess maybe because when I was watching it just from a fan standpoint, it was just watching the show itself, not really paying attention to what's happening off the stage, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Let's see here. So we talked about your favorite episode. You mentioned early on how you thought the first couple seasons of the hit era's version of Barney were good as well, just as good as what had came before it.
I would rank them just below 1 and 2.
Just below 1 and so 1 and 2 is like your top, and then you would put 7 and 8.
7 and 8, yeah.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Why do you put them before like seasons 4 through 6?
4 through 6, when we're talking specifically about the TV show, they had, not to say that it's bad, it's great. Those seasons are all fantastic.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of writers, a lot of different writers, and they did on 7 and 8 as well, but they also had Steve White as the head writer. So everybody was kind of marching to the beat of the same drum. There isn't quite as much consistency with 4, 5, 6. But again, those are, and it might just be I didn't grow up on, when it came to the TV show when I was really little, the ones that I saw were 1, 2, 3, because that's what was airing on Treehouse TV back in the day. And then for the videos, I saw the later ones. So I didn't quite grow up on the 4, 5, 6 episodes. Gotcha. And so I saw those later, and so I can be a little more analytical about them.
For sure. Yeah, you're one of the people in the group that is like the most. You're one of the ones that are like one of the most knowledgeable when it comes to Barney and like behind the scenes things, history, and that kind of a thing. What got you into that side of viewing Barney, where you analyze the episodes and things, and you learn about the behind the scenes things? Did that just kind of, I guess my question is, did it kind of just cultivate into this thing where you just started to gather this knowledge, or did you go specifically?
There was a point, I think I was around grade 7 or something, when because I wasn't paying, I was always interested in to see what Barney was doing, but I wasn't sitting down and watching the show all the time.
Yeah.
There was a point where I got to around grade 7 or 8 or something, where I kind of looked at it and I said, how did they do that? What made this so captivating, not only to me, but to kids all around the world? And so that kind of got me started. And that was around the time that there was starting to form a Barney community on YouTube. And so I was starting to peek into that a little bit. And so that was all fans. That wasn't anybody. Now with History Fans, we have people who actually worked on it, interacting. It was just, there was like a hand, like 10 or 15 people on YouTube because that YouTube used to be more of a social media platform than it is now.
Yeah.
Now it's really just a video hosting site, but they used to have, you could go on somebody's channel and there would be like discussion boards and all that kind of thing. So I would peek into that, and then eventually I joined in. And so that got me interested, first of all, in the costume and how that worked and how the taping was done, but also in the educational side. What are we doing here to make this valuable for kids because I had seen like articles that mentioned, oh, it has 100 or something teaching elements in every show. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I would look into like Dorothy and Jerome Singer from Yale did a lot of studies on Barney and Friends. I got my hands on one of those at one point, and I got to read it, and that was really, really interesting to me. So, and that got me started. I did some early childhood education stuff in high school and a little bit after that. And that's what, yeah.
Nice. That's cool. Cause I remember the YouTube era. I tell people all the time, that's back when like the best quality of Barney stuff we had was somebody's video camera recording the screen.
That was a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they were like, you can only do like so many minutes. So it was like part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5 kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was a moment in time for sure.
just to illustrate what a different era this was. Drew Sonic Hogg, as some people might know him, or Drew Pierce.
Yeah.
He was doing at the time the Jimmy Kimmel bit of unnecessary censorship, where you take a clip of something and you put a bleep over it to make it sound like something else. He was doing that with Barney, just as a fun, like, poking thing. And one of those became the #1 or close to that #1 comedy video on YouTube.
Wow,
so
really?
Yeah, it was on the front page. So that's when that was when really anybody could hit it big on YouTube. Now there's so many steps you have to go through.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that. I remember watching his videos back then, but I did not know that it became like #1, one of the #1 videos.
Well, that was cool because obviously he made it known that he was a big Barney fan, and so people understood that this was just all poking at it in love. But a lot of people liked those videos. He did those for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You also, so you said you got your hands on that kind of like Yale report when they were analyzing Barney and figuring out all those different elements that it had. You also had an opportunity to interview Steve White as well, didn't you? Way back when?
Yeah, I don't think that's even online anymore. But I was starting something it didn't quite go over, but yeah, I did. He was very gracious too. So I do have that document. I'm not sure it's online anymore, but I have it if anybody wants it.
That's cool. And that's way before we started to really interact with these guys and girls who were involved with this show, like online. What's that experience like for you? And it doesn't have to be specifically when you talk to Steve, but just even in history fans, if you comment and a guy like Bob Singleton or someone responds or reacts to it, what's that experience like for you, having these people who worked on this show that was instrumental in your life growing up now be engaging with you online on these social platforms today? Like, how is that like for you?
It's really kind of cool because, with history fans, that plush fans came first and then history fans. That's what, and plush fans obviously was started by Jess Nelson, who was the production designer for the first bit of Barney and Friends and some of the Backyard Gang stuff too. That was started by him, and so Dan White and Bob Singleton and Bob West and all those people. It was really around COVID when the community really started to expand, and there started to be all these other groups and more casual fans coming in, and that's when everything really migrated to Facebook. And so that's been really cool. It's nice. It's interesting to see. I'll just open my notifications at some point. It's like, oh, Bob Singleton liked this, Stephen White liked this, Sandy Wolper liked this. It's real, but it's really...
Yeah, for sure. This thing is it skipping on your end also?
Yeah, I think it's good now.
Okay. Yeah, it was doing.
Did you get that answer?
Yeah, I got that answer. Sorry about that though. I don't know why it's skipping like that.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, yeah, it is such a strange thing. It's kind of surreal. And I get to talk to these folks, and we have them help out. Some of them with our show that we work on, Clubhouse and things like that. It's such a strange thing, and I've said it many times when I'm talking to them that I think we're all really, really I guess blessed could be the word to say, where we get to be part of this fandom where the people who also were a part of this franchise interact with you, because you don't get that with many other community groups and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to one, how important Barney is to far more than just the fans, but also how appreciative people like Bob West and these other guys are, that they take time out of their day to have conversations with just regular folks, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great thing. I'm glad. That's one of the main reasons why I'm glad to be part of the community, is because you have these folks who really care about this franchise as much as, maybe more than we do, if not as much as we do, and then care about us as the fans, where we almost feel like we're sort of a family. There's obviously some crazy stuff that happens, and we have disagreements about things. Most of the time, all good fun, but it really feels like a family between all of us. So it's interesting to hear how other people receive those same experiences. So that's why I asked that specific question. When we talk about Barney, we know that it got a little wonky towards the end, the Rift era, what we call it. You're very analytical when it comes to, and very opinionated when it comes to Barney and things that worked and things that didn't work, which is always great, because you're not just someone who's just blurting out an opinion about something, which we can always do, but you're someone you've actually watched these things, and you've watched from beginning to end, and you analyze what works, what doesn't work, what worked in the past, those kind of things. So it all comes from a place of educated opinion. When it comes to the Rift era, is there a favorite? Do you have a favorite episode from that era that kind of stands out among those?
A favorite episode. So a lot of people know that I'm not the biggest fan of the Rift, what is called the Rift era. You could also call it that 2006 onward kind of period. Yeah. They were, it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what happened, but they were trying, I think, to broaden the age group a little bit. Barney and Friends before that was always very specifically for like 2 to 4. Was kind of the hard line. I think with those, they were trying to maybe expand it a little bit, go into some social emotional stuff that might be past the 2 and up. And I think that older audience was well served, and Barney was well established by then. So everyone was kind of expecting 2 to 4. And when you do some of those things, you can kind of lose the younger kids. And I think that's gradually what happened, is that they were doing things that were above the knowledge, but and so, or the experience of those kids, and so they were starting to lose them. But I don't want to put them down too much, because I know people worked really hard on that. There is a lot of great stuff within that time. So my favorite episode from that period, there was one, just off the top of my head, there was one called "That's What a Mommy Is" that was done around that was season 11, I think.
Season 11, yep. Yeah,
that one's really nice, because it's about Baby Bop learning what mothers do and what their job, and there wasn't too much of a plot that kind of dragged it down. It was there was an incident happened, and she watches how the mother responds, and then she repeats that incident. So that one was structured very well. And I think obviously mothers, parents in general, that's a big thing for little kids. That's like the center of their world is parenting. So, or their parents. So I think that one was successful. There were a lot of episodes mixed within the ones that didn't quite work that still were pretty good. So I don't want to bash that whole season, that whole era.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some changes that didn't quite help.
Yeah. And I didn't notice it growing up when those came out, which is weird, because when they came out, I was well past the age for Barney. 2006, I was 13. So I was clearly old enough to notice those changes, but I didn't. The only thing that stood out to me when it changed was now these episodes are split in 2, right? And selfishly, like for me, I think just as a like super fan that I was then, for me, I only viewed it as like, oh, look, man, we get double the content this season. You know what I mean? So like I was more excited that it was split in 2. I didn't pay attention to any of the reasonings or things like that. And besides that, the only other thing that I noticed was how there was like an absence of kids when it came to season 10. And so I didn't necessarily know that.
I don't know that a lot of people know this, but with season 9, there actually exist 2 different versions. There was the version that aired on PBS that was 30 minutes. And then there was a 15-minute one that went to the UK because the Hit Entertainment was a British company. And the producer, whoever in the TV station or whoever said, we really don't want these American kids. So could you do one with just the dinosaurs? And so there are a few of them on YouTube. These little 15-minute versions without the dinosaurs. And I think that's I suspect that's why they added Riff, was so they could have another character to play off of if they weren't necessarily going to use the kids as much. So I think they were trying to incorporate that. And I think by 11, the kids kind of come back. And so I think they realized, okay, that doesn't quite work. You need the human kid characters as well. Yeah,
I think you might be right when it comes to Riff, because with him being included, and I'm a fan of Riff. And
I'm not a fan of Riff. Riff is completely inoffensive.
I think the fans are fans of Riff when it comes to voice actor, body actor, and that kind of thing. But just the addition of having this extra dinosaur for what seems to be no reason is kind of where people kind of draw the line.
Especially when they brought the kids back, it kind of felt like, okay, what do we do with him?
That was very crowded,
he as it went on, he was gradually, they were not making merchandise of him, and he was disappearing from he wasn't being put on the covers or all of that kind of thing. So there was kind of a thought of, okay, now that we don't need that anymore, what do we do with this character?
For sure. Yeah. I always say I wish that he would have had a better chance to succeed in that show, because I think, like you said, he was just kind of almost just like let's just toss this thing in here to fill the void of what's missing. And so you can kind of see that he didn't really have much of a character. He just blends in with, he's basically an orange version of BJ in a sense.
He's kind of a perfect mix of BJ and Baby Bop.
Yeah. But they could have adding a new character. They could have done so much more where it would have made him more of an important element. But you can tell that it was kind of just created from that point of like, we just need to put something in here to fill this missing piece, which at that time, 10 were those kids. They were there, but they were like all extras in a sense. They would just come in and disappear during songs and things. It was just very
They would literally run in during a song, and then as soon as the song was over, they'd run away. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Isn't Barney supposed to be imaginary? Why is he here?
Who brought him to life here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why'd you just abandon him in the park?
Yeah. It's weird to just see him stroll in.
Yeah. I never liked that. I liked that when season 11 came around, they did half and half. So he would sometimes just show up, and then sometimes on that first half of the episode he would pop up again. So
I think they would do that on the A segment.
Yeah.
I think in almost all of them they do it on the A segment.
Yeah. And I like that they started to introduce that back also during that time. It was like it didn't serve it the same way. Even with season 9, for him to pop up during the theme song, it just always felt weird to me. So I'm glad they went back to that. Even though when they went back to it, he took forever to pop up. Do you ever notice how much longer it took for him to form than it did?
That was kind of throughout the hit season. They added the extra sparkles. I kind of wonder if that was because maybe when Hit got it, maybe they did some tests and said, well, it happening so suddenly, maybe if we give kids a little more time to process Barney's coming to life, add those extra sparkles. I'm not sure. That would be something to ask like a Jocelyn Stevenson or something. But
that would be that's a cool question. I'm gonna write that down just in case I ever talk to these kind of people, because I've always wondered. I made a joke video. I don't know if you remember it. I think it was last year or something, of like I compared like the beginning of season 1, 2, or 3 Barney or whatever popping up, and then for a Hit, I kept putting in like these gifs of like people just waiting, like the 4 hours later thing. Because like, all right, at any point he's gonna pop up. Like, let's get this thing rolling along.
If you're used to the old way, it's like, okay, come on.
Yeah, let's figure this thing out. You have? I'm surprised you're not sitting in front of it right now. You have a pretty good collection of Barney items.
Yeah,
right?
I was trying to set it up so I could be in front of my collection. I couldn't. The lighting where in that room is not particularly great. But yes,
Yeah.
I unfortunately most of the stuff that I had in early childhood is gone. Actually, pretty much all of it is. But when I was born in the mid-90s, so when I was in high school, it was a lot easier than it is now to find Barney stuff at thrift stores.
Oh, sure.
And so you could go, and so yeah, I was able to, with like allowance or pocket change or whatever I had, was able to just walk in there and grab, amass a pretty good collection. So I've got all of the. Also at that time, around the time the show was ending, the DVDs started to become like they would show up in bargain bins and they would show up at the dollar store. So it was really. So I have all the DVDs. I have a good number of the. I have all like the major release videos. I'm missing some of like the Time Life ones and some of those other things. But I have most of that, and then I've got a lot of the books. I've got a lot of plush. I've got all kinds of stuff.
What's the rarest item that you own? Do you own any rare items?
The rarest item, actually, it might have been a year or two ago. I was in a thrift store and I found just hanging on the wall I wish I had brought it with me, that 10th anniversary Barney.
Oh yeah.
That really woolly one that you can like pose. That one rarely even shows up on eBay.
No, yeah.
But I found it for $5. And so
man, that
was an incredibly lucky find.
Yeah, seriously. I've been looking all over for that one. That's one of the only ones I've never owned. Aside from the gun dolls, and now I have those.
You've got two of them, yeah.
And I found them in the same week on eBay, which doesn't happen. You can't find them ever. And so like to find two of them in the same week on eBay was kind of weird.
Did you get them together, or were those two separate listings?
They were two separate listings by two different people, and I paid $100 for each.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was so strange. I didn't want to buy the second one. But I was like, this is such a strange thing. This usually doesn't happen. So I went ahead and just bought both of them. I might end up doing a giveaway or selling the other one or something at some point. Because I'm not one of the collectors where I collect a bunch of the same things. Like for me, I feel like if I just have one, then that's good enough. But the anniversary for the 10th anniversary one, I've looked everywhere for. I can't find it. And Andrew, he just found one brand new, like still in the box. His collection, which is insane. I don't even know how he found something like that. But
I don't know how Andrew finds most of his stuff.
Yeah, me neither. I mentioned it on the podcast that I did with him and Kaylin. The way I found out about Andrew is when he bought the Barney couch, because I was right in the beginning stages of Mr. K's Clubhouse, and I saw the couch and I was going to buy it and put it in the show because I was like, this would be a cool kind of like piece. And when I messaged them, they were like, "Oh, someone else just bought it." And then Andrew came out of nowhere with it. And I was like, oh, look, this guy has it. And we've had a few of those moments where I almost buy something and then Andrew beats me to it kind of thing. So but yeah, I don't know how he gets his hands on a lot of that stuff or how he comes across it. But good for him because he has some really, really, really good things in his collection to have. I have some other rare things now that I've been able to collect. But I was never a collector of rare, like, when I started doing my collection again, I was like you as a kid. The only thing that I had from childhood was my videotapes. Because my grandma, she would go to the store, and if she saw a new tape that she didn't recognize, she would call me and ask me like, "Well, this is the name of this one. Is that new or not?" And I would tell her, and she would buy it. So I had every video release that was ever released to stores, all the way up until they started doing those just redundant clip show video. I think the last clip show video I bought was "I Love My Friends," maybe. And then I stopped buying anymore after that.
That was the last one, I think.
Yeah. But then they did they weren't clip shows, I shouldn't say. They were like just compilations.
The episode compilations?
Yeah. I didn't buy those. Like, Let's Go to the Moons and Perfectly Purple Day and all those. Because I was just like, I already have them like on VHS tapes or things like that. But I started to collect because when I found out I was having a daughter, I wanted to have something to pass down to her aside from just the tapes. And so now that's why I kind of have this collection behind me, which is on the floor and everywhere right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's kind of fun now to be kind of a collector and find some rare items, but that was never like in my initial plans to do that. Let's see. You said you have almost all the Time Life videos?
I think I have almost all of them.
That's cool.
I've got yeah, there's 20 of them, right?
Yes.
I think I have 13 or 14 of them.
Oh, that's
Something
awesome.
like that.
I'd
have to look at a list, but I think I have most of them.
Yeah, I had every single one as a kid, and then my grandma and grandpa misplaced them, and we've never found them again. So I had all the videos at one point, and they were the only ones out of the entire collection of VHS tapes that I had that just somehow mysteriously just disappeared.
That's a shame because some of those are really rare.
Yeah, seriously. And I actually, my grandma has an in-home daycare, and there was a kid who was going to the daycare who had them, and she had grown out. She decided she was done with Barney, and so she gave them all to me. So she had the whole collection, and then they were gifted to me. And then somehow we thought they were in the garage for a while, but we've gone through so many times and have never been able to find them. So we have no idea what happened to them.
I hope they're still around because it'd be cool to have all of them.
Yeah, for sure. You're someone that you collect different versions of the same video, right? So you have like multiple copies of certain videos. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I kind of at this point, because it's getting harder to find Barney stuff, I do kind of, if it's not like if it's only a couple bucks or something, I'll buy it just to have backups of them. Really, videos are really the only thing that I buy multiples of intentionally, just to have backup copies. There's a preservation aspect to that as opposed to like say plush toys or something. And then also the books, because I have a 2-year-old nephew, and is she 10 months now? She is 10 months niece. And so before they were born, I gave my sister a big collection of Barney books, and they're enjoying those. So awesome. I do try to get all the books because obviously little kids will wrestle with them, and so for sure I want to have backups for them.
Definitely. Let's talk about this new thing for a little bit. We all know this Barney's World show is apparently supposed to be coming out next year. I think I've told you before, like I vowed to not talk about the show. The only time I talk about it is if we're doing like the podcast kind of thing.
I try not to too. Yeah.
Right. I think we share that commonality until we start to see something like formulate with it where we can really base opinions off of. I just kind of leave it alone or almost ignore it in a sense. What's your thoughts on and I kind of know what your thoughts are, but for those who may not have seen your comments on social media and things like that when it comes to Barney's World, what's your thoughts on this new version and what it seems to, from just the artwork that we have and kind of the basic synopsis, what it seems to be formulating with this new version of Barney? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. So first of all, the announcement was a complete surprise to me. Because it's been so many years, and there was a reboot that was supposed to come out in 2017, was it?
Yeah.
That 9 Story was behind, and that didn't happen. I kind of thought, okay, that ship has sailed. And truthfully, I was under the opinion that we don't really need more Barney and Friends. Because again, this is for such a specific age group of very young kids. And all the old stuff is on YouTube. It's all been very well preserved by the fans, and there's stuff on streaming as well. There is more than enough Barney content to sustain a little kid through that. So I wasn't expecting this at all. When I first saw the redesign, my thought was, this looks like something they would have tried like 10 years ago, and by now would be a complete, nobody would even remember it. Because, there's nothing new under the sun. They've done this before with other properties, not Mattel specifically, but there was a VeggieTales relaunch like 10 years ago where they redesigned everybody, and that completely bombed. There was a Bob the Builder one where they did the same thing, and it fell off the face of the earth. That's kind of what seems to happen with these, is that there's an initial backlash from adults who grew up on it. It comes out, there's a bit of a consumer products push, and then it just kind of disappears. Everyone just kind of forgets it exists. And with those two brands specifically, they've actually, whenever they do market those characters now, they've actually reverted back to the original designs because those new ones were so disliked. So this seemed like an idea that they would have tried back then and wouldn't have really worked. When it comes to, my thing with this is I don't understand why they would want to redesign him so drastically and make all of these changes, because it's not like with something that exists for adults, there is that interest among adults of, oh, how's this person going to interpret? This is something for very little kids. So I'm not talking about the Daniel Kaluuya thing. Maybe we'll get that with that if that ever happens. But with this Barney's World thing that we know is coming, parents are looking for things that they grew up on, and grandparents are looking for things that worked for their kids. And so making it so different, why even reboot? Why not just create a whole new batch of characters if you're going to do that? When it comes to relaunches of kids' properties, especially for the preschool set, the one that I kind of get the impression has been the most successful has been the Blue's Clues relaunch.
Yes.
And when I saw that, I was kind of hopeful, because that was done with the creator of Blue's Clues, and with the original hosts of Blue's Clues are part of it, even though there's a new official host now. That seems to really be striking that nerve of, we're going to bring this back, and it's pretty much like you remember it. They redesigned Blue, but it was really just to transition it to 3D. It wasn't really, it's not that different at all. Mm-hmm. So I'm not quite certain if this is going to work quite like they intended to. The other thing, that when I saw the press release, and it was all business language.
Yeah.
We at Mattel, we're looking to expand the depth and breadth of our IP portfolio. It kind of seems cynical to me. Mm. And look, we don't know. We have very little information. Really, all that we know is what Barney looks like, and that they've changed BJ's name, which is, it's funny and it's also ridiculous. We really don't know much about what's going on. So I kind of want to address two groups for a second. I haven't seen a lot of the, this is ruining my childhood kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the Barney community, but just in case, this isn't interfering with your Barney. Your Barney still exists, again, on YouTube. You can still get most of the videos and the DVDs pretty cheap. So you can watch your stuff, and you can have your old plush, and you can do all of that stuff. So your Barney doesn't go away just because this new one's coming out. Right. But what I also want to say is that I feel like there are going to be people who maybe feel obligated to support this just because it's quote unquote the official version. And you really don't have to. You don't have to acknowledge this as Barney. You don't. If the trailer comes out and you're just and you just kind of go, this doesn't look like anything. This isn't what Barney's supposed to be. Then don't watch it. You don't have to acknowledge it. You don't have to buy the merchandise. Now, I'm going to be watching it because I'm just too curious to see what they're going to do, and I try to keep up with kids' TV anyway. But if you're not interested, you're not interested. I'm not even calling it Barney yet. I've been calling it, if you're in the groups, I call it the Creature, because I feel like it has to earn that title. I'm not terribly impressed with the idea that 10 years ago, a mega corporation bought Thomas the Tank Engine, and by consequence got this other property that they're now trying to capitalize on. Right. This isn't Barney to me until they've proven that it's worthy of that name.
For sure. I like that. I like that viewpoint. Part of me is optimistic, and it's because of, like you mentioned, Blue's Clues. It works because it's the same formula that it's always been. Yeah. Right? And that's a new version that works today. Like you said, they changed Blue, but Blue really, just got switched to CGI. She's the exact. She doesn't look different at all. She's the same dog, just different animation.
The other thing that not to cut you off, but the other thing that did come out was there was a document that leaked out of Mattel that outlined some of their plans for some of their IP, and Barney was in that. And one of the things that document said was Barney is a friend and not a teacher.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, that the educational side of Barney, that's the backbone of the series. I don't know how it would, what the purpose would even be. Without that. Now, what I will say is Barney has been absent from pop culture for so long that this Barney will be the first Barney that a lot of kids know. And so if they do go in a totally different direction, and maybe even like the Rift seasons, they try to court an audience that's a little bit older. It might not be as disastrous as it was then, just because there really isn't an expectation. So they kind of have a fresh start in that regard. But I think it's become pretty evident that this is going to be something completely different from what it was in the first place.
Yeah, one of the arguments that people always say is like, oh, well, Barney's not supposed to be animated and that kind of thing, which I can see that argument. But then I look at shows like Daniel Tiger and Don Quixote, which are Daniel Tiger's not new anymore. But Don Quixote is a fairly new show that are both by the Mr. Rogers Foundation, Fred Rogers Foundation. And they're both characters that Mr. Rogers had as puppets on his show, Don Quixote as well as Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger is like pretty much an animated Mr. Rogers. It's different because it's animation. It's not Mr. Rogers himself, but the elements and things that show taught are in Daniel Tiger. And I feel like people would get over or be a little bit more willing, and it ties into what you were saying, being a little bit more willing to appreciate or accept this new version of Barney if they keep who Barney is intact. If it's just an animated version of the shows that we grew up with, keeping who that character is to his core alive and intact, it won't be so bad. We saw on that document, he's a friend, not a teacher. I think that's why that first reboot didn't work, that they were trying to pitch, which I believe was supposed to see him as a baby.
That was Vicky Sterling who told us that, right?
Yeah.
He was one of the editors from Barney and Friends.
And I think that's why that doesn't work, because I think if it doesn't work where Barney's a baby, it's not going to work where Barney's like a 6-year-old kind of thing.
And we don't know for sure that that's what they're doing, but that's what the design kind of implies. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised, because obviously Paw Patrol now, and there's a lot. Even what they're doing with Thomas the Tank Engine, which I also don't like that one, but there's a big focus on kids as the characters and the big wide eyes and all of that stuff. So I think that's probably where it's going.
Yeah, and we just saw that with the Winnie the Pooh trailer that just came out, which is that exact.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm like you. I'm gonna watch, and I have, if Onyx and my Cairo, he's only a month now, but if they like that show when it comes out, we'll watch it. Maybe if it's something very much like what Paw Patrol is and that kind of thing, I won't turn it on, even though I'm a fan of Barney and that kind of thing. If it's that same vein of a show, I won't even let them watch.
Yeah, wait to see it before you decide if it's good for your kids or anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm optimistic that hopefully they do something right with them. I can accept the drastic change of the look of things if they do right by the character.
I hope this part of the podcast ages terribly.
Yeah. So do I. Yeah. Because I just hope that they don't put this thing out and it bombs, and then it can't really destroy the franchise that came before it, but it could be a little detrimental to just who Barney is as a character. He already isn't very well accepted as much as like I think he should be selfishly.
Hurting the reputation, kind of.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's not something that happens with them. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Before we finish this whole thing up, every episode we ask the guest to bring on an item, or a couple items. It just depends on the person. That some Barney item they own that they hold near and dear to them, maybe more than their other items. What item did you bring? And just explain why that's the item that you chose.
Yeah, I brought 2. I've noticed a lot of your guests have been bringing 2.
Yeah.
So I brought one of them is here it is. So this is, I mentioned that a lot of my Barney collection, my original from when I was very little, is gone. This is the one thing that I still have, this plush from when I was little. And there are, if I had time, I would have dug them out, but there are photographs of me with a Barney, and I'm pretty sure it's this one. We were moving. I was about 12, I think. Most of my collection was already gone, but we went to a storage. We had a storage locker, and this was in there, and you can see his eyes are kind of worn out. The material on his teeth is going, so he was well loved. And so I found him in there, and I kind of just snuck him away.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I felt it necessary to tuck him away somewhere, and but he survived the trip, and now I have him, and I take very good care of this one.
Awesome.
The second one is actually a picture, and this is more recent. So here it is. This is.
Oh, nice.
Let me just get situated here. That's me in the center, and then that's Drew, who I was talking about before,
Awesome.
and that's Jeff Street, and we are at the Day in the Park with Barney at Universal Studios. This was taken in 2016. Those two are some of my. I met them like in that early Barney community, and they're some of my closest friends, and so we all got to come together and go to Universal Studios, and we saw the Barney show a ton of times, and we got to hang out for a week, and that is a very precious, special memory for me. So I am awesome. Yeah.
I remember when you guys finally did connect and did that. I remember seeing pictures and things like that. At that time. That's really awesome. I'm glad that you got that experience. I never is that the only time you ever saw Barney live was there in Universal, or have you seen it before?
Yeah.
That's the only time. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to ever make it to see any. Well, the only show I've seen is Birthday Bash, and I've said this in a few different podcasts where I forget because the show itself just wasn't good that I forget I even saw it. But yeah, I'm always envious of people who get to see Barney live, but more specifically, those of you who've been able to go to Universal Studios and have that experience, especially now that it doesn't exist.
It's really sad that it's gone because they were so nice to us. The staff there and Mr. Peekaboo, they made sure we were obviously coming back, and we were in that picture, we're wearing Barney t-shirts. And so they made sure that we got a lot of time with the characters, and they gave us extra special treatment. They went above and beyond, and they did that for the kids, and then for every older fan who came that I've ever seen documentation of. They did that for everybody, and that they really went out of their way for everyone. So I'm sad that more people don't get to experience that.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that helped. That shows that there were people out there who weren't necessarily part of the franchise itself, but still kept the magic of who that character was alive.
For sure.
With those kids or older fans that came in to see. Did I ever tell you that I had the chance? I was lined up to audition for Universal Studios for Barney.
You've mentioned it. I'm not sure you've ever gone into detail about it.
Yeah, so it actually was 2017. They were looking they were looking for new body actors. They were looking for Barney specifically, and then a couple others for a Halloween. They did like their Halloween fest thing or something there. And my parents, my mom and stepdad at the time, and my two younger sisters were flying to Florida for a family get together with my stepdad's side of the family. And I lined up with Universal to go because I was going to try to tag along with them and go do that while they were doing whatever they were doing, because they were visiting Universal Studios and Disney World and all that stuff anyway. And I had it lined up to go, lined up with them to come in person and audition. And my family didn't take me along. It was a plan to take me, and then they decided that they weren't taking me anymore. And so they only got enough tickets for just them. And so I missed that opportunity, but I was scheduled to go in like the next day of us flying in to audition to hopefully be Barney there in Universal. So it's one of my sad stories where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have been able to make it down there. Because I was at a time where I was old enough, but I didn't have money saved to just buy my own ticket and kind of or else I would have just flown there myself.
Sure.
But yeah, I always kick myself because I'm like, I wish I would have been able to make it there, and who knows if I would have made it or not. But I have been doing local birthday parties, for free here anyway. So I just thought like, well, I've been doing this thing my whole life. Maybe, how hard could it be? So
right.
I wish I would have made it there. I had that same experience with Birthday Bash too, when they were auditioning for their second leg of the tour. I didn't like this show, but I was like, this would be a good a door in to like play Barney. And so I was lined up to do a video thing with them. And my mom had some health issues that I had to miss the video audition with them. And they were like, because that was V Corporation, so they were producing the Sesame Street Lives.
Right.
And they invited me to instead, since I had missed that too, they invited me to audition for Big Bird on Sesame Street Live. And at that time, I was like, no, I only want to play Barney. I don't want to play Sesame Street. And so I didn't do it. And now I kind of wish that I did, because who knows where, I could have had a career in costume characters or whatever. I like where I am now, though. But I always think sometimes, like, I wonder what would have happened if, one, I could have made one of those two auditions, or if I went ahead and just auditioned for Sesame Street Live, where I would be right now. Who knows? But those are kind of my two stories of missed opportunities. Mm-hmm. So before we finish up here, I always ask everybody the same question when we close it out, or kind of the same question. And so I'll ask you, why, simply just why Barney? Why do you think Barney has stuck around in your life for so long? Why do you think we need a character like Barney in the world that we live in?
I've thought about that. I'm really not sure. Mm-hmm. I guess it just made that impact on me when I was really, really little, and I just didn't want to let it go. Barney is Cheryl Leach would always say that Barney was created for kids, and he exists for kids.
Sure.
And so he was kind of the perfect combination of big, lovable playmate and kind of guiding figure, gentle, loving figure, comforting figure. And I think it was that perfect marriage of those two things that really made it stick for me. And so I don't know, just personality I have, I guess. I just wanted to hold on to that. Even when I initially outgrew it for a little bit, I was still, I never really outgrew it, but I was always interested to see what Barney was doing. And so, I think it was that kid-centered approach, completely aiming it to them and catering it to them, that really made it stick out among some of the other things that were around at that time.
For sure. Yeah, I completely agree. For me, it was more of like just a safe space. I spent a lot of time with Barney shows and videos, cassette tapes and things like that than I did any other show. And just in that moment, for me, and I mean, I can watch the show now as an adult, knowing these are costumes and things. And sometimes I find myself watching it almost from like that kid viewpoint, where to me, he's like, that's an actual being on camera, not someone in a costume. I kind of can cut that out sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes I find myself getting lost in it. And I think it's just because as a young age, it was just such a safe space for me. So I think that's why it is that way now. So
as an adult, I think one of the things that I like about the Barney story, and that is inspiring about the Barney story, is that because of this kid-centered approach, this was not something that people thought would work. And it really, they had to find those specific people who could help, who understood the vision and could help build it up. And then even when it was coming time for PBS, if you've read, Larry Rifkin was the, what was he? Executive of programming at CPTV when Barney he was the one who brought Barney to PBS. And Barney was in competition with Sherry Lewis Lamb Chop and with Shining Time Station, which was Thomas the Tank Engine. And the idea, this was before PBS Kids. This was before the whole morning was dedicated to kids programming. They were under the impression that they would only be continuing one of these shows. And nobody even paid attention to Barney. And then it came out and it exploded. And that's really cool, that if you have this idea and you really believe in it, you'll find people that can help make it work, and it'll find its audience. That's a really cool, inspirational thing for me to think about.
It really is. And from a small town in Texas, no less, is what's even more amazing about it. And that's what kind of drove me to go ahead and kind of give the Clubhouse my all. Is I'm in a small city in Omaha. I'm like where the biggest city Omaha is, I believe, in Nebraska. But it's no one knows much about Omaha, Nebraska. It's one of those places that like people think it's just cornfields and not like a city or anything here. But seeing that, like you're saying, something like this that has just worked, and coming from not from Hollywood, not from New York, but this small town
in Texas with just the right people at the right time is super inspiring. I think it's a story that everyone should hear, whether you're a fan of Barney or not, because it's a really inspiring story that for me, it motivates me to keep just pushing along, and hopefully one day this whole thing will work out because of the example that they've set forth. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Well, thank you, Jenn, so much for coming on the podcast. I hope you had a good time.
This was great.
Yeah, like I said, you're one of the people on my list that I was really excited to talk to, and I know people are going to be excited to hear from you. So thanks again for being willing to do this episode for us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
For the Barney history fans, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Again, you can watch this now on YouTube. We're also on the Barney History Fans website. Spotify also has a video option where you can watch it. Or if you're just someone who listens to podcasts, you can listen wherever you stream your podcast. It's on the major ones, I think Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So you can find them anywhere there. If you haven't filled out that Google form, which is now on the website, fill that form out if you would like to be a guest here on the podcast. And who knows, maybe we'll see you here in your spot of love. Thanks again, Jenn. Take care, everybody.